I told her. Pack up your belongings and leave this land in 72 hours, or we'll have you carried off. Those were the exact words that were recorded on my ranch gate in huge red letters, stamped with the seal of the Homeowners Association, and signed by the HOA president herself, none other than Diane Wilburn. Bizarrely, they were unaware I had completed the acquisition of their clubhouse lease only 3 days prior. There I was in my boots, clutching that paper in one hand, my coffee in the other, gazing at that notice. On the other side of the field, Diane could be seen, arms crossed, smirking with satisfaction from her golf cart, most likely thinking I'd burst into tears or better still begin packing. Instead, however, I took a final sip of my coffee, placed it on the fence, grabbed my phone, and called my attorney. "Let's double the rent," I told him calmly. He hesitated. "You sure you want to go that tough?" "They gave me 72 hours notice to vacate my own ranch," I said. "Now I'm giving them 30 days to either pay 3 times as much or get the hell off my property." And that was that. I hung up and walked back inside. What they didn't understand was that their beloved HOA clubhouse, pool complex, tennis facilities, and parking lot were all located on a tract of land I had just purchased under a shell company. A deal I had kept quiet for months. And now? It was time to turn the tables. But let me go back a bit, so you'll know how I ended up here. How a ranch owner like me found himself at war with some clipboard-wielding neighborhood dictators. This is more than a tale of land. It's a tale of respect. It's a tale of community. And most of all, it's a tale of not underestimating quiet people. Before I proceed, ask me, where are you viewing this from? Let it down in the comments below. I wonder how far such stories of mine go. I'm curious to know. Now, let me present the players who raised the dust in my tranquil existence. I'm Matthew Blake. Folks refer to me as Matt. I took over Blake Ranch from my grandfather, a proud slice of land that's been in our family for 3 generations, situated right on the edge of Willow Creek, Texas. I'm not gaudy. I sport denim shirts, drive a beat-up pickup, and wake up each morning to feed critters and mend fences. I appreciate quiet. I appreciate gentle. But I won't be pushed around. And then there's Diane Wilburn. Picture a woman with pursed lips, a trimmed haircut, and a trimmed attitude to match. She's the head of the Willow Creek Lakeside HOA. She relocated here 5 years ago after retiring from corporate marketing, and set about reshaping the HOA into her own personal force to be reckoned with. Citations for brown lawns, fines for incorrect trash receptacles, tickets for parking an inch too close to the curb. Diane did not only stick to the rulebook, she authored it. My closest friend and neighborhood ally is Ricky Dawson, a single dad in his mid-40s and a mechanic. He resides in the last home on this side of the ranch boundary. Since I assisted him in repairing a ruptured water line during a freeze, Ricky and I have been close. Ricky is one of those men who knows everyone, hears everything, and never gives up when something doesn't smell right. And last but not least, my late grandfather George Blake. Although he's been dead 6 years now, every single thing I do on this soil has his voice at the back of my head. He was that sort of bloke who'd sit down with a stranger, have a biscuit, and still beat them at poker. His greatest tip to me: Matt, people can steal your time, your money, your peace, but never let them steal your pride. I ought to have kept that in mind sooner. See, it all began some 2 months ago. I started noticing odd visits on my land. Unknown persons walking dogs too near my fences, drone neighbors snapping pictures, HOA officials making notes along my barn. Ricky informed me Diane had been attempting to take over land. She was convinced the HOA had rights to for future development purposes. She assumed part of my ranch lay on an unused community reserve. Complete falsehood. I called the county clerk, brought out all the deeds and land surveys my grandpa ever maintained. My family's title to that land was tight. But Diane wasn't interested. She was making a case, not on truth, but on persistence. I received a letter one day informing me I had unauthorized livestock structures close to a nature buffer zone. Then one telling me I disrupted HOA aesthetic continuity with my ranch gate color, black iron, not their mandatory brown wood. Then the fine. Then another. Then the 72-hour eviction notice. They wanted to push me out, quietly and quickly. That's when I made my move. There had been a rumor circulating for months that the owner of the land where the HOA clubhouse was located was retiring and divesting land plots. Everybody poo-pooed it. I did not. I created a holding company, BH Acquisitions, through a commercial real estate friend. It didn't have any overt connection to me. When that property came on the market, I paid for the tract in cash. All legal, all kosher. They never had a chance. 3 days prior to receiving the eviction notice, the deed was in my name. They taped that notice on my gate, unaware their clubhouse lease was up in less than a month, and that the new landlord was going to be me. So I did what any rancher who'd had enough was going to do. I called my attorney and instructed him to draw up a new lease with triple the rent, beginning immediately. But I hadn't sent it yet. I let Diane have her little triumph for a minute. The next day after receiving the notification, she marched down the gravel drive with her clipboard and 2 of the HOA board members behind her. I was standing alongside my truck throwing hay in the bed. She didn't even pause for hello. "Mr. Blake, you've been served. You now have 71 hours. The board has voted unanimously that your property is in code violation of HOA expansion, and since you would not comply, now you are a risk to the community." I dried my hands on a rag and grinned. "Thanks for the headline." She looked puzzled by my lack of concern. "You're not worried?" "Oh, I'm worried," I nodded. "But not about what you are." In the afternoon, I drove into the village and delivered the new lease papers in person to the HOA office. 3 times the rent, payable in 30 days, or move out. Diane didn't notice it until the following morning, and that's when all hell broke loose. She scheduled an emergency board meeting. Neighbors were bewildered. The HOA newsletter did not appear last week. The neighborhood Facebook group filled with queries. Why is there a rent notice on our pool? Why did Diane just run out of the clubhouse crying? By evening, Ricky arrived at my doorstep. "Dude," he continued, eyes bulging. "You just struck them where it hurts. Diane's losing her mind. She called the mayor." I chuckled. Later, when we clinked beer bottles on my porch, my phone vibrated. It was a text from my property camera. I opened the app and stopped in my tracks. There were 3 individuals wearing black hoodies lurking at the back of my barn. They were cutting the fence, attempting to let the cattle out. My heart sank. I flung the beer and ran off the porch, Ricky hot on my heels. We leapt into the truck and tore down the dirt road, churning up dust, adrenaline pumping. Because whatever they were, they just messed with the wrong rancher. I floored the gas pedals so hard I almost left Ricky in the dust. Tires chewed up the ground as I bullied my way down toward the barn. The wind screamed through the open windows, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat in my ears. I had one prayer on my mind. Please don't let the cattle be out. I came driving up just as 2 of my cows were stumbling out through a break in the fence, clipped clean through, like the bolt cutters had been used. The figures in hoods fled the moment the headlights fell on them. One cleared the ditch and dashed into the woods. Another ran toward the neighbor's hedge. The third, he was slower. He stumbled over a feed bucket. Ricky jumped out of the passenger side before I could halt the truck. "Hey!" he called out, racing after him. "Hey!" I jumped out, grabbed the spotlight in the bed of the truck, and directed it at the barn. I spotted 2 cows halfway down the road, and another halfway into my workshop. My heart fell. My workshop contained glass, hazardous equipment, cans of paint. A frightened cow could rip everything to shreds in seconds. "Get back!" I shouted, attempting to sweep the animal out with my hand. "Come on, girl, come on." But before I could handle the cows, Ricky yelled. "Got him!" He hollered from the ditch, gasping for breath. "Matt, I got one." I ran over holding the light tightly. When I arrived, I halted. The man he tackled wasn't some stranger punk. It was Aaron Mills, the secretary of the HOA board, Diane's stooge. Always the one scribbling notes at board meetings. Always the one bobbing up and down when she gave orders. His hoodie had ridden back, showing his sweaty, guilty face. "You're trespassing," I said, my tone low and menacing. "And vandalizing. You know what that's going to mean." "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he panted. "She just said to scare you." "I swear." Just scare you, that's it.
She.
Ricky snarled. Let me guess, Diane. Aaron's silence told me so. I reached into my pocket, took out my phone, and took a few photos of his face, his sliced-up gloves, and the destroyed fence at our backs. You're going to stay right here while I call the sheriff, I told him. No, please, Aaron quaked. I have a family. Kids. She said you were a threat, he stated. That if we didn't act, you'd take over the whole neighborhood. I didn't know she lied about the lease, I scowled. So you confirm Diane sent you? He nodded reluctantly. Yes. But she didn't inform the board the land was yours. She said she had sources that stated it was disputed. She just wanted to intimidate you into leaving. By then, Ricky had his arms crossed, lips curled with disgust. Cowards, he muttered, sending lackeys to do her dirty work. I called the sheriff, and to their credit, they came fast. Small towns don't play when livestock is involved. Trespassing and damaging ranch property, especially fences, comes with real consequences. Aaron was taken in. He begged for forgiveness the entire time, even tried to throw Diane under the bus harder. But I wasn't thinking about revenge, at least not yet. I was thinking about damage control. We labored until the break of day fixing the fence. The cows were all but unscathed, just spooked. My workshop had a broken window and one cabinet tipped over. But no real damage. Could have been a lot worse. I slept 2 hours that night. I returned to the ranch gate by mid-morning, when a black SUV arrived. It was Diane, wearing a pristine cream suit, as if she was attending a courthouse wedding. Sunglasses on, clipboard clutched under the arm as per usual. She didn't alight immediately, merely glared at me. Then at last, she emerged. Her heels crunching on the gravel. You think you're very smart, she said in a voice as cold as steel. I do know I'm smart, I said, without smiling. You weren't entitled to purchase that property, without consulting the board. We have a collective ownership arrangement. No, I replied calmly. You were in a leasehold. It ran out. You didn't renew it. Now the new owner is different. That's not against the law, that's just poor business on your side. She slowly removed her sunglasses. You'll destroy this whole community. I shrugged. That's ironic, because you attempted to destroy me first. She snapped. You don't have a place here, Blake. You're an artifact. The future is in plans and neighborhood coexistence, not your filthy animals or your rusty old tractor. And I said, my rusty old tractor now owns your tennis court. Diane's jaw locked so tight I thought her teeth would break. I want a meeting, she spat. With the board. And you. Today. Okay, I said. I'll be there, but I'm bringing my attorney. That night, we gathered at the clubhouse, ironically, in my apartment complex. I arrived with Mr. Templeton, my well-tailored attorney, who appeared not to have cracked a smile since the 90s. Diane was already in the room with the board, looking like a high school principal preparing to expel a student. Templeton started scanning through his papers, declaring that as of June 1st, the rent was fixed at the new agreed value. Diane interrupted him straight away, labeling the deal as unfair and extortionate. Templeton politely set her right, saying it was the market-adjusted value from an appraisal and stating that county laws permitted the HOA to vacate if they rejected the new lease. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing nervously around. Diane contended that more than 40 residents protested the increase, but I reminded them that no one owned the building. No one said a word until Susan, an unbiased board member, asked Diane why she never told them the lease was up. Diane conceded she thought it would automatically renew. Templeton firmly replied that she was mistaken, and that her effort to forcibly evict me could qualify as the basis for a harassment lawsuit. The mood became charged as Diane threatened, "This isn't over," before storming away. Following an uncomfortable silence, Susan requested to be spoken with in private. Outside in the faint clubhouse light, she admitted that although she did not agree with Diane's actions, others were fearful of her domination of all things, including circulating false rumors that my ranch was on reserve land. I assured her it was not. Susan admitted some were willing to resist but needed my assistance. It was then that a thought came to me. Instead of driving them out, why not take over the HOA and make it an honest, flourishing community? Before I could tell Susan this, a crash rocked us, a scream and broken glass. We rushed to discover fire flickering from the window of the HOA office. A firebomb had been thrown. The blaze was hot, orange claws burning into the night air as papers crackled and smoke filled. The scent of gasoline was unmistakable. Susan fought to dial 911, while I rushed to get the fire extinguisher Ricky had smartly provided for such a mess. Disregarding Susan's caution about explosion, I rushed into the blazing office, putting out the flames until Ricky showed up with reinforcements. When the fire department arrived, we had put most of the fire out. Although curtains and the front desk were damaged greatly, the danger was evident. Someone intended to burn something, or someone, and we all understood who. Neighbors mingled in pajamas as alarms diminished. Diane showed up, shaken and frightened for the first time. She approached me in anger, accusing me of inciting the assault and fomenting hostility. I firmly denied participation, but reminded her that actions have repercussions. Before she could think, Sheriff Mendes showed up. A firm and reliable man in town, he took over the situation as soon as he arrived. Diane was demanding arrests, but the sheriff told them they would investigate and requested to see me alone. I related the escalating tensions, trespassing episodes, loose cows, Aaron's confession, the lapsed lease, rent increases, and now the blaze. Mendes heard me out, conceding the HOA had clearly overreacted. In response to my question about charging Diane, he informed me that unless there was concrete evidence, she'd probably get off. Nevertheless, he cautioned me to remain vigilant. This was far from over. That evening I couldn't sleep. By morning, the town was abuzz. Social media was filled with rumors and questions. Was I a threat? Was this payback? Even some hushed that I actually controlled the HOA secretly. Diane went into overdrive with an urgent newsletter, fear-mongering and demanding new security assessments to shield against outside threats. I'd lived here my entire life, and overnight some neighbors viewed me as the enemy. One afternoon, Miss Linder Burns strode to my gate, grasping her little dog and blaming me for spreading chaos with my stock. I politely reminded her my kin had been raising cattle here, even before most residents had lawns. She huffed that the town had changed and perhaps it was time I did as well, stormed off, and I was left sitting under the old sycamore tree with my hat drawn low by sunset. That's when Susan showed up quietly, dropping a folder in my hands full of incriminating proof. Emails, meeting minutes, doctored minutes Diane had censored to keep the lease expiration from the board. She trusted me because I wasn't intimidated by Diane, and thought I wanted to make it right. I read the documents and recognized that this was the smoking gun. But what had stunned me most was on the final page. A $10,000 bank transfer from HOA funds into Diane's personal account, typed as community maintenance but never documented. Diane had been stealing. Does anyone else know? I asked Susan. No, just me, and now you. This turned everything on its head. As the sun began to set, a notion formed. It was time to take it public. But I needed to play this smart. I knew Diane's playbook: fear, deception, intimidation, and now it was my turn to come out. That evening, as I started typing my announcement, 3 loud knocks on the door. Sheriff Mendes appeared before me, with a stern face, clutching a search warrant for my workshop. They had received an informer that I was keeping illegal equipment associated with the fire. I was amazed. They believed I had said it. The sheriff told me he believed me, but needed to look into it, because of pressure following the fire. Ricky joined us as we got ready to search. Deputies searched through every drawer and cabinet. I stood there helpless as they rummaged through my grandfather's old tools and lawnmower. Suddenly, a deputy shouted. Behind a tarp on a shelf was a black duffel bag with 2 glass bottles, duct tape, and a gas can with a burned handle. The makings of a Molotov cocktail. Mendes glared at me, and I swore I hadn't been playing tricks before. Ricky attested to my character, but the sheriff told me the case was complex. He wouldn't arrest me then, but cautioned that things were serious. By lunchtime, the entire town was abuzz with rumors quicker than the internet. My phone was blowing up with texts from friends outraged at the raid and rumors that I had burned down the HOA office. Susan phoned, quivering in her voice, asking for reassurance. I assured her that it was planted, that Diane was framing me because I was getting ready to expose her. And then it occurred to me. The evidence Susan provided me, which was still in my house, was missing. I rushed to the locked drawer where I'd stashed it, finding it gone without a sign of forced opening or break-in. That evening, Ricky and I sat behind the workshop, putting the pieces together. He figured Diane had someone sneak in, and maybe the same individual had placed the fire items. But how? I grumbled. I have cameras. Then perhaps we should look at the video, Ricky replied. I'd not checked them through. I opened the feed on my laptop and began scrolling back to last night. The workshop camera revealed nothing out of the ordinary until 2:14 a.m. Then a shadow crept slowly across the gravel, being careful and huddled low. The man moved to the side window, opened it with something thin and long, and moved inside. I zoomed in as far as I could. He was a guy in a hoodie, but when he glanced for just a moment, I got his profile. It wasn't Aaron this time. It was Tyler Wilburn, Diane's son. Tyler had graduated from college the previous year and perpetually seemed mad, spending more time at the golf course than in a classroom. Diane had spoken of him once in one of her HOA speeches. My son Tyler will assist with future expansions when he comes home. And now he was breaking into my house. I saved the video, copied it in 3 locations, and sent it to myself by email. Let's see her spin this, I said. But before we were able to take action, another punch was struck. The HOA released a formal statement, printed, sealed, and dropped off at each residence. It stated, in light of increasing hostility from Mr. Matthew Blake and the perilous nature of recent occurrences, the HOA voted unanimously to initiate legal proceedings to condemn disputed areas of Blake Ranch under the Emergency Safety Clause. I balled up the letter in my hand. They're trying to steal my land, I said. They know they can't, Ricky said. They're bluffing, but everyone is falling for it, I said. Even people who used to smile and wave at me now crossed the street. My heart was weighed down. My granddad's words rang in my head. Pride's good, Matt, but truth's better. You don't fight liars with fists, you fight them with light. I wanted a means of exposing Diane and Tyler in public and with great fanfare. Then I had an idea. A town hall meeting, 1 week from that day, a live community forum where all could speak and hear. I'd play the video. I'd read all the lies. I'd have everyone see who Diane really was. I had the permit granted at town hall the following morning. The location was the high school gym, middle ground. I made flyers, sent out emails, phoned. Folks began to respond. Curious, split, anxious. Then came the day. I put on my neatest shirt, pulled in tight, hat shined. Ricky assisted in setting up the projector, and Susan brought duplicates of backup copies. More than 100 chairs were set up in rows. People started arriving. The gym was full by 6:30 p.m. Even local news arrived with cameras. I took the mic at 6:59. The whispers ceased. I cleared my throat. My name is Matt Blake. My family and I own this land for 3 generations. I am here tonight not to battle, but to speak the truth. I toggled the projector. Slide by slide appeared all the bogus citations Diane had issued, the altered lease minutes, the embezzled money. Gasps came from the crowd. Then the video. Tyler breaking into my workshop. Finally, I addressed the crowd. Ask yourself, is this the leadership you want? Dead silence. Then someone rose to their feet. It was Peter Malaloy, the HOA treasurer. I move for Diane's removal as president of the Willow Creek Lakeside HOA, effective immediately, he said. Half the room rose in support. Then the back doors burst open. Diane stood there, face flushed, eyes burning. You think you've won, Matt Blake? She snarled. She strode to the mic, yanked it out of the stand and spat. Let me tell you something. This town was crumbling before I came. I made it clean. I made it safe. You think you're heroes? You're just noise. And then from across the room, a voice boomed. Tell us what happened to the $10,000, Diane. Everybody wheeled around. It was Susan. Diane stood stock still for a moment, then sprinted towards the door. But Sheriff Mendes was there first. Not this night, he announced, raising cuffs. You have a warrant for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit acts of vandalism. The room erupted into gasps. Cameras popped. Neighbors mouthed words. In a flash, the queen of the HOA was brought low. But the story wasn't over. As she was led out, Diane looked back over her shoulder and shouted, "My son won't let this go." Her voice echoed through the gym like thunder after lightning. Even handcuffed and exposed, she still had the nerve to threaten us. As Sheriff Mendes walked her out, the group of people erupted into a combination of hushed oohs and boisterous responses. Some neighbors nodded their heads and clapped softly, a few others shook their heads, but the majority simply stood in shocked silence, the type that occurs when something massive breaks and you have no idea what comes next. Susan approached me. "We did it," she whispered. "Yeah," I nodded. "And now we have to deal with her son, Tyler Wilburn." We hadn't seen or heard from Tyler since the security camera caught him breaking into my workshop. But if his mother's threat held any water, he wasn't going to slip away quietly. The following morning, I was drinking coffee on the front porch, observing the sun rising over the pasture as Ricky drove up in his truck. He leapt out with a manila envelope in his hand. This was delivered to my house. No return address. Figured you'd want to see it. There were 3 grainy photos inside. The first was of my truck parked outside the town hall. The second was of me speaking with Sheriff Mendes outside of my ranch gate. The third was a picture of me sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee. It was taken from the trees surrounding my property. I jumped up at once, looking into the woods. Ricky extended a hand towards his pocket. "Someone is watching you," he whispered. "They are trying to shake you." My jaw clenched. We're not backing down. That night I went to Sheriff Mendes and reported the photos. He wasn't surprised. "I have officers looking over Tyler," he told me. "He's keeping quiet, too quiet. But don't worry. We're on it." But the very next day, things deteriorated. It was going to be an ordinary Wednesday. I was assisting a rancher next door to repair his fence. Ricky was out in the back lubing the tractor. At about 11 a.m., I received a call from Susan. "You need to come to the HOA building immediately." "What's going on? Did somebody break in again?" When I got there, the front door of the HOA building was shattered and hanging from the hinges. Inside was chaos, papers scattered all over the place, shards of broken glass, chairs turned over. It was vandalism. But this time, the perpetrators left a sign spray painted in oozing red letters on the wall. "We're taking it back." Ricky followed me back, arms crossed. "That's Tyler." Susan emerged from the rear room, shaking her head. "Sheriff's coming," she stated. "But the neighborhood is in fear, Matt. Some believe you instigated this. Diane was having things in check." I let out a sigh. I just needed to bring truth to light. I never wanted it to escalate into a war. Susan peered out the shattered doorway. "It has now." That evening, I had a second community meeting in town square to soothe nerves and lay it all out again. I carried copies of evidence, discussed the sheriff's continued investigation, and assured my aim was peace, not destruction. Most people listened. But not everyone. Tyler's group of friends, children, boisterous and loud, sat in the back, arms crossed. They did not utter a word, but their stares did. I returned home after the meeting and sat on the porch, same place, same cracked mug. That's when it happened, a booming sound. Not a gunshot or car backfire, but an actual explosion. I jumped up from my feet, racing heart, smoke billowing from the location of the barn. Ricky came sprinting from the back. "Matt, the barn is burning down." We ran across the field. The wooden walls were being licked by fire, burning louder every second. The dry hay inside was feeding it quickly. I grabbed the hose as Ricky was running to obtain fire extinguishers. But the fire was spreading too fast. The barn, the same one my grandfather had built with his own hands, was being engulfed by fire. I didn't care about the structure. I cared about the animals. Open the gate! I screamed. We opened the side doors wide and let the goats, chickens, and 2 horses out. They panicked but were unharmed. It was only when the roof was about to collapse that it took the fire department an hour to get the fire under control. By the time they did, the barn was all smoldering wood and warped tin. Sheriff Mendes took me by the arm. "We discovered remnants of an ignition device," he said. "This was no accident." "Tyler. We're pretty sure," he went on. But once more, no prints. No witnesses. I was still. Burning down the barn wasn't vandalism. That was war. That evening, Ricky, Susan, and I just sat on the porch. None of us said anything for a long, long time. At last, Susan spoke. "We need to turn this around. Take it back. Make sure the HOA doesn't slip into their grasp again." Ricky nodded. "Let's shut them down in court." "What are you thinking?" I asked. Susan leaned in close. "We use the HOA charter against them. Call a vote. Bring in a new board. Diane's under arrest, her son in question. We can take it back. The people just need to think it can happen. And what if Tyler attempts to do something again?" Susan shot me a stern look. "Then we deal with it together." That was the strategy. An open HOA board election, public and transparent. This time, it wouldn't be about control. It would be about rebuilding. But 2 days shy of the vote, something frightening occurred. I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You took my mother down. You will not like what I do to your legacy next." There was a picture of my grandfather's grave, vandalized with red spray paint. I held my phone so hard it cracked. Ricky saw the picture but didn't say anything. He stood up, took his shotgun off the wall and said, "Enough's enough." The next morning, we were at the cemetery before dawn. My grandfather's headstone was located in the corner of the old oak field, way down past the ridge that faced the hills. It was usually a serene spot where I went to get my head clear, converse with Granddad, or simply sit in silence and think about what I was brought up to be. That morning, however, it was defaced. Red spray paint mottled the stone like blood. Big mad words say, "Traitor family," and under it, little sloppier but nastier words. "Burn with your barn." I was angry, but rage was too mild a term for how I felt. I knelt on the ground, attempting to rub the paint away from my sleeve, tears rising behind my eyes. Ricky stood behind me in a frozen tableau, clutching his shotgun harder with each breath. Susan came later, pale-faced when she saw the destruction. This is personal," she barely breathed. "It's always been personal," I whispered. "But now it's holy. He never hurt anyone, and they attacked him too." Sheriff Mendes arrived soon after. He knelt down next to me, scanning my surroundings, then took out his phone to photograph everything. "We've got surveillance video of the cemetery gate. Cross-matching town records now. If we can trace the car." "It was Tyler," I whispered. He stared at me, eyebrow raised. "We can't verify that." "I saw him," I said, getting to my feet, fists tight. "Who else would go so far?" Mendes didn't dispute. "Listen, Matt, the town votes tomorrow. That's what this is all about. He's pushing you, trying to get you to lose your temper. He wants you to break. You give him that, you give him control." I had a feeling he was right, but it didn't deter the tempest raging within my chest. We did what we could to scrub clean the gravestone. I swore to Granddad under my breath that I wouldn't give up, that I'd fight this out not with fists, but with truth and perhaps a bit of Texas toughness. Before long, the sun was high overhead and we had flyers plastered across town. HOA emergency election, June 3rd, 6 p.m. at Willow Creek Community Hall. Be there. That evening, Susan and I did a live stream Q&A on the HOA page. We calmly answered every question, produced receipts, video, and evidence that the HOA could be taken back for good. We received more than 500 views in 1 hour. People were paying attention. A few neighbors who'd been silent up to then were starting to get in touch. Mr. Jenkins, a retired schoolteacher, told me, "I voted for Diane one time. My error. You've got my vote now." The twin Whitakers, the owners of the bakery, shared with me. Our rent doubled during Diane's time. You came to our aid when the pipes burst. We recall that. Even little Ellie from the house on the corner, only 16, made a sign that said, "Vote for Matt, he repaired our fence gratis." It wasn't heroism. It was about being a neighbor. That's what Diane forgot and what Tyler never grasped. Election day arrived quickly. The Willow Creek Community Hall was fuller than a rodeo evening. Neighbors, journalists, kids waving pamphlets like fans, old-timers sitting front row in lawn chairs. There were 5 candidates for board seats. Myself, Susan, Ricky, and 2 old-timers who had never desired the drama, only the peace. Tyler appeared too. He arrived late, wearing all black, gum-chewing with that smirking look on his face. He didn't even campaign for a board position, just stood at the back observing, waiting. It was a paper ballot, open. 1 per family. The town clerk counted aloud from the microphone. When each name was read and votes piled up, I could sense the momentum shifting. Susan claimed her seat. Ricky as well. And then president of the HOA, Matthew Blake, 96 votes. Tyler Wilburn? Right in at 7 votes. The hallway burst into applause. It wasn't a standing ovation, it was relief. People hugged each other, they cried. Some man even carried in a piece of pecan pie as an offering of peace. Tyler did not applaud. He exited into the hallway, looking at me as he went by. He did not speak. But when I tailed him to communicate, to attempt once to resolve this amicably, I discovered something that brought me up short. On the hood of my truck sat a lone bullet and a message. "You stole everything from my mother. Now I steal everything from you." The writing was unmistakable. Susan sprinted out behind me, wide-eyed. "Matt, you need protection." And she was not wrong. This was no longer HOA drama. This had gotten personal. Sheriff Mendes instantly put officers outside my ranch for the night. The town supported me, but that bullet had spoken volumes. Tyler wasn't finished. His next play would be his. What none of us knew was that he had already filed something at the county courthouse, and it was about to land like a bombshell. The envelope was thick and official-looking, bearing the county seal. Certified delivery dropped off at the ranch gate just as the rooster crowed. I opened it with shaking hands. It was filled with a suit, brought by Tyler Wilburn against me, Matthew Blake. Charges: fraudulent purchase of land, trespassing, illegal interference with community property, and, are you kidding me, emotional distress. My jaw tightened as I read through the thick legalese. The signature at the bottom assured me of it. Tyler had sued to reverse the sale of land, the very sale that made me landlord of the HOA clubhouse, tennis courts, pool, all of it. He wanted to destroy the whole agreement, erase it. Which meant that if he prevailed, they could reclaim the clubhouse property again, and perhaps drive me off my own ranch through loopholes in the law that he had no right mastering on his own. That's when it hit me. He didn't do it alone. Another name surfaced in the papers: Bradley S. Tomlinson, Escar, a lawyer for the Wilbins, a notorious out-of-town shark who buried his enemies in paperwork, loopholes, and lengthy court battles. Tyler wasn't acting out of anger alone. Now he was planning. I sat on the porch with the letter in my lap for nearly an hour, saying nothing. Ricky drove up and saw me immediately. "That's not a face of a man who just won an election," he told me. I gave him the letter. He read it, then growled, "This guy's out of it." Susan arrived a few minutes later. "I received one too," she said, holding almost exactly the same envelope. "He's suing everyone who voted to have his mother removed. Claims we conspired to slander her character. Defame." Ricky snorted. "She literally stole HOA funds. This isn't about winning in court," I said, finally standing. "It's about dragging us through it, making it so painful we'd give up." "But he doesn't know us," Susan added. "We don't back down, not after what we've come through." Still, the pressure was mounting. I'd just rebuilt trust with the neighborhood, and now the whispers came back, in the grocery store, at the hardware shop. Is Matt actually who we think he is? Perhaps Tyler's simply attempting to get justice. Did Matt buy that land properly? That one hurt because yes, I did. But folks don't require evidence to accept a rumor. A dash of doubt will do. Sheriff Mendes stopped by that evening with news. "We've verified it," he said. "Tyler's been underwriting an anonymous neighborhood flyer campaign. They're calling it HOA Reborn, blaming you for making backroom deals to manipulate the town." "They're afraid of what happens if I remain in office," I grumbled. "No," he said. "They're afraid of how people like you remember how it's supposed to be done. Equitably. Honestly. With your boots in the muck." That was when I realized what I had to do. Not battle this in court by myself, but bring it all out. All the manipulation, all the backroom deal Tyler attempted to sweep under the rug, all the falsehoods they spun around the neighborhood. I brought in a media investigator, Claire Rogers, a small-town reporter turned watchdog. She'd covered land conflicts for more than a decade, and had a reputation for uncovering truths attorneys sought to hide. She came out to the ranch with a mic and notepad, sat with me, Susan, and Ricky. She reviewed the old HOA minutes, the purchase records, the videos of Tyler near the barn and workshop, the text messages we'd archived. Then she smiled. "They don't stand a chance if this hits public," she said. 3 days after that, Claire posted her article, "The Truth Beneath Willow Creek: How a Rancher Saved a Community from Its Own HOA." It went viral, not local interest alone, but statewide. As it turns out, folks love a good underdog story, particularly when it involves a contentious rancher defying the clipboard despotism of an HOA out of control. Local television stations caught wind of it. The mayor called. Overnight, Tyler's small lawsuit was the town joke. They ripped down his posters. Doubted neighbors returned with fresh-baked cookies and apology letters. One elderly man left a note in my mail. "Blake Ranch has been the pulse of this town longer than any of us. Don't let them take it." Nevertheless, we had to go to court. The courthouse was filled to capacity on the day of the hearing. Tyler entered with his shark attorney, chin raised high like he was going to receive an Oscar. He didn't even glance at me, but I observed him, not with anger anymore, but with something else, pity. Because the truth had already caught up with him. Claire's report had gone to the judge before the hearing. So had the video footage, Aaron's written confession, and the HOA financial audit Susan turned over. When it was time for our lawyer to speak, he stood tall and said simply, "Your Honor, we're requesting a full dismissal based on lack of evidence and overwhelming documentation showing the defendant acted lawfully, ethically, and in the best interest of the community." The judge wasn't long in coming to a decision. Motion granted. Tyler's face went white. He remained there, jaw twitching, fingers twitching at his sides. For once, he did nothing. No threat. No scream. Nothing but silence. Later that night, I went back to the ranch. The sun was low on the horizon, creating long shadows in the field. The animals were still. The breeze was soft. I went over to my grandfather's headstone. The paint was removed now, scrubbed and restored by some neighbors while I was in court. New flowers rested at the bottom, and a small card wedged between them read, "Thank you for raising the kind of man who doesn't quit." I stayed there for a bit, considering it all. The land, the fire, the fight, the legacy. Ricky sat down with 2 sodas. We cracked them open. "To George Blake," he said. "To honesty," I added. And then, as cicadas buzzed and stars twinkled to life, I leaned back in my chair at last and grinned. Because the ranch was still once more. The land was mine. The people were free. And the HOA? Well, they now rented triple to me.